Release the Kraken.
No fancy intro today other than that. Thank you so much for joining. This is normally where we talk about the Detroit Red Wings, and we're going to talk about them. But I thought I was looking at the weekend, and it's really at the end of the season, and there's so many exciting things that happen. We're heading into the playoffs. The season's basically a wrap for the Red Wings. They've obviously officially missed the playoffs. So we'll take a look at how they did on the weekend and what's coming up to close out the season this week. But the big things that I wanted to highlight, you've probably seen them, and I think I'm a little, is this like the best season in the NHL in the last 30 years? It might be. Now, we still have all these playoffs to go through, and there's probably lots of interesting storylines, but crazy year. We've got one of the generational players, and that name that gets thrown around a lot, but Connor McDavid just had a kick butt year, and his running mate Leon Draisaitl ain't no slouch. So I guess all those first overall draft picks paid off. And you know who else had a great year? Ryan Nugent-Hopkins also. Well, okay, first of all, Draisaitl should have been the first overall pick, but he was picked after Aaron Ekblad and he was picked after Sam Reinhart. You know, guy had a lot of guys picked ahead of him. David Pastrnak. This guy just got 60 goals last night. He had 57 pops in 3. How good is he? Like, just kind of crazy. So first off, I just wanted to say thank you for joining. Welcome, Hockey Nation fans. Good morning, RJ Calabro. Good morning. Please hit your likes and subscribes as he prompts you. We always need those. But what a year it's really been. And we have lots to go. But, one team that's really, really ramped up, Edmonton Oilers. I kind of predicted this. They were my pick to win the Stanley Cup. It remains to be seen what happens in the playoffs. The Boston Bruins, I did not see coming. They got back Krejci and Bergeron, our new coach, and Jim Montgomery. But beyond that, they picked up Hampus Lindholm last year. They got Charlie McAvoy. They've just gotten better. They picked up Orlov during the season. Like, that is like one of the best defenses, maybe the best overall defense in the league, right? And that's bear it out. You've got crazy year from Linus Olmark. You got crazy year from Jeremy Swayman. They're the best team in hockey, which is gross to say because I don't like the Bruins. But that being said, there's a few games left and there's a few storylines left. This is funny. I didn't want to be a bust. I don't think that was going to happen, Connor McDavid. The guy literally just ripped up the NHL. And I said he was on a mission this year to win a cup, to win the Rocket Richard Trophy, to win the Hart Trophy, to win the Art Ross Trophy. I think he's going to win all those things. He might. Let's see what happens. We got a lot of playoffs ahead of us. So there were some things that, we accurately predicted. Thought he was shooting for 160. You could just tell. He signals what he's doing by the way he plays. 151 points. That's a crazy year. His running mate, Leon Draisaitl, got, what is this, his third 50-goal season in the NHL? So 51 goals, 1, 2, 3 50-goal seasons in his career. Okay, but let's go back for a second to Connor McDavid, who said in that interview, 151 points on the year, 64 goals is notable. So right now he sits atop to win the Rocket Richard. He just had 3 points against the San Jose Sharks. Look at his point totals as they just climb. Like, if you thought 123, his number last year was great, he was kind of a consistent like 40-goal pace, when healthy. He missed some games here and, obviously lockout shortened year, but 64, just terrific. And his face-off percentage greater than 50%. His shooting percentage jumped. Like, in every category, he just has rocked it. Power play goals alone, 21. 69 power play points. So he's not doing this just on the power play, obviously, but that's huge. Like, that's like insane. I mean, he went up 50% in this number, just crazy. 50% in goals is just crazy. And somehow he improved on his assist total. So really, this is an interesting series too. I got to watch this. I meant to watch this, which is they're doing like this kind of, I don't know what the heck you call it. Not an expose, but And yes, Matthew Knies, a finalist for the Hobie Baker Trophy. Hobie Baker winner, Adam Fantilli. Guess he's going second overall. He's gonna be a good player. I mean, he has totally the ability to be a top NHL player. Will he do it right away? Maybe. He's so big and talented. It's very possible. There's a lot of holes in his game. What position will he be ready and where does he go? Those are all factors. Crazy year for Connor McDavid. Crazy year for David Pastrnak. 109 points. He gets a hat trick last night to get his 60th. And this is another guy, 60 goals. He had increased his production by 50%. So that's interesting. He had previously high was 48, which is pretty darn good, but you can see he missed 10 games there. 109 points. So this is great news. I mean, he's a big piece of why the Boston Bruins have had an absolutely phenomenal year. Will this carry over into the playoffs is always the question. It's never, a guarantee, but only 12 losses on the year. They got 2 games to go. So even if they get, 2 more losses, like it's multiple winning streaks. I don't know if you can call it streaks at that point. It's just like, hey, they haven't been beaten. Crazy, crazy year for them. So that's good news. If you go over to the West, Dallas has had a great year, 102 points. Why? In part, it's because of this guy, Jason Robertson. Oh, and then Sid the Kid's had a real good year. So Sidney Crosby, Pittsburgh's going to miss the playoffs, unfortunately, but he gets 91 points in 80 games, and he becomes the 15th player to hit 1,500 points. All smiles, 2 games to go. Most likely, I mean, it feels like they're not going to make the playoffs. So that's a real disappointing end for a team. And I can't remember what the number is. Is this like the first time in 8 years or something they haven't made the playoffs? So lots of success for Pittsburgh, including a Stanley Cup. But right now, they're on the outside looking in. I don't think they have any tiebreakers with these guys. Florida just ripping it up. Did not see that coming. I thought this team was just going to be as inconsistent as they've been all year. A big part of this is Alex Lyon? The 30-year-old journeyman goalie who's played 36 NHL games, replacing Spencer Knight in the rotation. And he's maybe been their best goalie in Florida. Like, they're kicking butt here. So interesting. Absolutely monster years for Matthew Tkachuk. Monster year for Brandon Montour. Some really great stories out of Florida in the end if they stay in here and make the playoffs. So, this could play out a couple ways. If they lose a game, they still have 93 points. Pittsburgh would have to win both games to get 94. They can't have 93 because I don't think they have the tiebreaker at that point. They would have fewer wins. The Islanders, I think, basically just need to win one of the last 2 games. They're on a 2-game winning streak. They've been playing great. Bo Horvat getting a little saucy when asked about how he likes playing in front of. I mean, if you've ever been to an Islanders game, they're enthusiastic. They won 4 Stanley Cups in the 80s. They do not forget. They've had so much drama. They finally got their arena. That is a great fan base. If you go, they're like gritty Long Island fans. They know hockey. They love their Islanders. And they're not booing them like they were in Vancouver. Strange thing is, I think they said that Rick Tocchet, since taking over, is 17-11. I don't know if that's good or not. It may or may not be. You've got Levi. Why do you have Levi's on today? What's the Levi's significance? Go Orioles. Baseball. Good day, team Clomp Sauce. How are you doing? How are you doing, Real Deal Prime? And Seth Monsieur Smith. Is that what this means? I don't even know. There's a lot going on in your username, Seth. So those are all big news stories. We know the Rangers, 106 points. New Jersey, 108. Carolina's got 1 game in hand, but you don't like if you're Carolina going to the playoffs without Svechnikov. That is not good. Not good at all. Toronto, can they beat Tampa Bay? We're going to find out. I think they can, but it ain't going to be easy. Tampa is a grizzled veteran team with lots of firepower and lots going on the back end. That's going to be a tough team to play. That third line is really big and can score. Tough scenario. Lots of excitement from the wild card group here, like Buffalo taking major leaps forward, Ottawa taking major leaps forward, and Detroit, even though the record doesn't show it, did definitely take some leaps forward, I feel. Integrating young players like Jonathan Bergeron, Sider, all good. All great news stories. So if you were Detroit, they have a game versus the Stars. Do they play Marco Casper? We talked about Pittsburgh, Sidney Crosby getting his 1,500 point, 15th player ever to do this. They thumped the Red Wings on the weekend, on Saturday night. You know who got thumped was Evgeny Malkin. If you watched this game, you saw Simon Edmondson stand him up at the line. Evgeny was trying to dance his way around a couple times, and Simon Edmondson showed he's not just a big, tall kid that can skate. He's a big, tall kid that can knock another big man down, because Malkin's like 6'3". So you have 6'6". He might be 6'7". Simon Edmondson playing tough. That is really positive for the future. Not a fantastic game for the Red Wings. Tristan Jarry didn't get a ton of work, but he stopped what he had to. Ville Husso was under fire. If you watch this, Pittsburgh was definitely on a mission. A real good year for Pia Suter. Lucas Raymond's numbers are off, but you can see you give him a year or two and he's going to find another groove and another level. He is so talented. Jonathan Bergeron's so talented. So these are all good news stories, even though the Red Wings get absolutely thumped in this game. Andrew Kopp, do you consider this signing a success? I don't think they're better with him as a second line setter. He had some struggles as a center. He's an effective third line guy, and he can flex up into other roles. So I don't think it's complete failure. This is not terrible numbers. You would have liked to see a little bit more goal scoring, given he got signed after getting a 21-goal season and the pace in the previous years in Winnipeg. 9 goals was really not ideal, but you got to think in a year he'll get his groove a little bit more in Detroit. I don't think anybody's trading for that contract. So long and the short of it, win for Pittsburgh, but they really need to win both games, and they need to have either the Islanders, well, ideally Florida, lose one of them. The Red Wings have got Dallas coming up. Dallas knocking off Vegas, by the way, in the weekend. Ottawa sending a little message saying, hey, we're for real, 7-4 win over Tampa. This is why I say maybe the Leafs are finally in the right spot here. Big win last night against the Anaheim Ducks. No, Colorado winning 5-4 in overtime, but Colorado's been absolutely a monster this year. So we talk about Jason Robertson getting 103 points. How about Mikko Rantanen, 54 goals? How about Nathan McKinnon? Missed a bunch of games, only played 68, 107 points. That's pretty awesome. That would have been he would have been right up there with Leon Draisaitl, I think. 14 more games, you would have think he would have got 20 more points. He might have been ahead of Draisaitl in the scoring if he played the full year. So these are the defending Stanley Cup champs, and they're playing like it. Not great opposition here, but it is what it is. I can tell you're an Orioles fan. Orioles fan, not Oreos, Orioles. Good morning, brand new. Good morning, Clom Sauce. Oh, no, really? Oh, that's terrible. That's always the risk when you bring up a young guy like that. That sucks. I mean, I liked what I saw from him. Hopefully he'll recover from the broken kneecap and be ready for training camp. I assume with that type of injury that will happen and they will rehab it correctly. There's unless it was dislocated, which would not be great. But if it's just cracked, then you're less worried. Oh, great, Klomp. Let's get some updates from Klomp Sauce. He'll be at the Red Wings at Hurricanes tomorrow. That is interesting. Let's take a quick look, speaking of the Red Wings, how we finish out the year. So they play tonight in Detroit against the Dallas Stars. It's a nothing game for both teams, I think, at this point. And then they finish the year with Carolina and Detroit. Can Carolina hang on to first place? I think it makes a lot of sense that they win this game. If they have to, if they want the better playoff position, they're trying to hold off New Jersey, who does not seem to lose any steam. I mean, Jack Hughes is also a phenomenal story. I mean, what a great year for him and a great year for New Jersey. They made the big Timo Meier trade. They already acquired Andre Palat in the offseason, and before that, they were kicking butt. Vanacek has worked out great. It's the return of Mackenzie Blackwood, Akira Schmid in net. They got lots of options, lots of talent, lots of depth, big defense. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Tonight, Dallas at Detroit, and then they finish the year against the Carolina Hurricanes. And then that will be all she wrote. Oh, that is not true. Wait, that is not true. They might have one more game. Is there another game? Oh, wow. We get 3 in Tampa. Wow. So you get 3 real good teams here. They play 2 games. They play 1 game at home and 2 games on the road. Detroit will be at Carolina. So are you in Carolina? Because this is showing it's in Carolina, not in Detroit. And then they finished the year at Tampa, where Derek Lalonde came from, where Stevie Yzerman built a team that he never got a ring for, that has won 2 rings. Overall, pretty exciting year. I think as we go through here, now we're just starting to prepare for the draft. We do have a fair Red Wings at Lightning. Oh, got it. Okay. But again, are you sure? Because those are both away games. Are you in Tampa? Or are you in Carolina? I thought you were in Detroit. Tell me what the deal is. I'm not impressed with Kopp. He's peaked and hopefully moves to a bottom 6. He has to be. They were much better with Michael Rasmussen, I think. But if you had Rasmussen in the lineup for the rest of the year, they never go on that losing streak. He was a big body. He was acting mean. He can score and he can skate now and he can win faceoffs. And he would stand up for teammates. And they were so much better with him when he was kind of playing in the lineup. So let's think about what we got here. You've got him. You've got Elmer Soderblom. Alex Chason, did they bring Alex Chason back? He's really not young, but man, he played real well for them in his call-up. He can do things around the net that you really like. Oh, you live in North Carolina, so you're going to Florida. Got it. That makes sense. There you go. Who is the guest? Is this a secret, RJ Calabro? Moose was a huge loss. Who is Moose? Is that what they're calling Michael Rasmussen? Is Moose? You know who else they called that was Mark Messier? He's a lot bigger than Mark Messier, but Mark Messier was really big, mean, and hard to play against. If he has anywhere near the fraction of the career of Mark Messier, just don't hit guys from behind. If you watch Mark Messier's Hall of Fame video, I was like, this is gross. Because he's the toughest player. And guys are like getting the puck, they're facing the boards, and he's like, bam. Like, what is that? That's not intimidating or anything. That's just like stupid. Okay, so Rasmussen is Moose. It is a fitting thing. He's 6'6" or 6'7". Like, he's huge. You know who another guy that's huge? 6'8", 6'9". Elmer Soderblom could have been up in the NHL. I think he would have got 20 goals this year. So you got him, Rasmussen. You can insert in that lineup. You got to move Andrew Kopp down. You got to like how David Perron played this year. It's not over yet, though, so previewing the Dallas game, but I think these games are kind of nothing. You know, those teams are all going to be in the playoffs. Their positions, I don't think, are switching around too much. Maybe Dallas has something to play for. Yeah, well, that is a monster. Like, how good is Mikko Rantanen? This is what I'm saying. Like, this is a great year, and I didn't even put him in the thumbnail, but I was like, oh, man, he got 54 goals. Is that 92? No, 102 points for him. Is that right? Because I think he has 48 assists, 54 goals. And he held down the fort with no Nathan McKinnon. You had injuries to Cal McCarr, and the one consistent guy that was always there was Mikko Rantanen. I mean, this guy is so good. He's from that 2014, 2015 class of Finn players that included Patrick Laine, Sebastian Aho, and Jesse Puljujärvi. And I don't think, they thought Laine and Puljujärvi were the big studs out of that. Turns out it was Aho and Rantanen. And, Laine is definitely a real good player. He got hurt again this year, unfortunately. And Jesse Puljujärvi has zero hockey sense. Just rough, different draft years. I think there's a year separating them. I think Mikko's a 96 and they're 97. Is that right? Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's 95 and 96. You know who else came out of that? Ville Husso. So that's a crazy. We all knew they won the World Junior Championships. That was a group of Finns for the ages, maybe the best group of Finns ever. Like that's a crazy group. And you've had Barkov come up. There's a crazy group of players. Even though he's Russian, he grew up in Finland, right? Or the other, yeah. Well, so Mikko Rantanen, absolutely a phenomenal story this year. Oh, I know what I was going to look at. Yeah, well, Connor McDavid, you succeeded, not a bust. Superstar, one of the greatest players ever. So if we just take a look, we know we got 3 games left. Larkin, point a game, absolutely been the best player overall on this team. I never thought he would consistently hit these numbers, but he's definitely matured. He used to be like, he still gives hand grenade passes, but he's got much more skilled wingers. Like when he's playing with Perron, he's playing with Lucas Raymond, they can soften some of the blow of his wild ass passes. Like he has some crazy bomb pass. I saw one, he was like, handcuffs Kubalik at the line. Jeez. That's what it's like playing with him sometimes. He's so fast, and he's not like a refined man. This is, his engine doesn't stop. He's definitely been a great captain for them, and these numbers are really helpful. Is scoring up overall in the league? What do you think? I think it might be, just given the top end anyway. Perron's been a real good acquisition. He's had some really good streaks. He's a veteran presence and a winner. And you hope that next year, if they add a couple more pieces here, that he's part of getting them into the playoffs. Although it's, remains to be seen. Kubalik, you got to say, he's a little inconsistent. He's a big body. He can really shoot and score. And this was a good signing. And he's got one more year at that $2.5 million contract. Lucas Raymond's numbers are down, and I kind of thought they might be. Sophomore slump for him is still pretty darn good. So last year, he had that real hot beginning. He had 57 points on the year, 45 this year. Maybe he gets a few more in the last few games. Career minus 49 is not ideal, and that's not what you would expect from him. He's a good puck pursuit player, and he's a good puck handling player, but there's definitely room for improvement in his game, and I think you'll see that over the this year and like next year and the year after. You'll see jumps in his production and improvements in his defensive play. He's not a big player, but he's so skilled and talented, so smart, and he definitely makes everyone around him better. Moritz, the Andrew Cobb, we talked about this. Pretty big contract. I thought it was too much. He does a lot of good things. He's a friend of Dylan Larkin, Michigan guy. And I think you've got to say, you'd want to see a few more goals. If you saw this as 15 goals, you might be okay with that contract because everything else he does. And he's improved in the faceoff circle. He was pretty horrible at the beginning. He's just under 50% now. Moritz Seider, the numbers are off a little bit. The beginning of the year was rough for him, right? It was not ideal. I know, Rantanen's so good. 25 and 39. 25, 30 goals. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So you look at Rasmussen, 56 games. He already had 29 points at that point. And what else he did on the ice was he was a big, big body. But not to finish on Seider. His numbers dropped a little bit, but he recovered pretty nicely. Even if he finishes the year at 42 points, maybe gets 1 or 2 more. He had 50 last year as a rookie. So the production's off a little bit. But the experiment with him and Ben Sherrod at the beginning was a complete disaster. And it wasn't until they separated them that his game turned around. Why? Watch Ben Sherratt. I always thought Ben Sherratt was just focused on defensive play, which is what he should be focused on. He thinks he's an offensive defenseman. That's why he's a minus 25. He is erratic to play against. When you watch him in the game, you're pinching, he's pinching. This is Jack Johnson 2.0. Used to drive me nuts with Jack Johnson. This guy thought he was better than he was. You're pinching up as his partner, and he's pinching up at the same time. Like, that's not how it works. Everybody, even Pee Wee, or what do they call it now? 12U. They know one D goes up, the other one guy falls back. It's like a teeter-totter. That's what you always teach the kids. Hold middle ice. And this guy's like cutting over to your side. He's playing the left shot on the right side. That's the other problem. He's not good enough to do any of that. Yes, he can skate and handle the puck, but it does not translate because he's just erratic and tough to play with. And you saw that, like, the guy whose numbers were horrible and everything was horrible, but Moritz Seider, that -6 was way worse. You look at him with and without Sherrod, he went from like a -15 now to -6. So what does that tell you? Rasmussen, again, this probably would have been a 15-goal, 30-assist season. That is great. And I think he's got room to keep going up. Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that. Canada versus the U.S., Monday night, 7 p.m. Very interesting. Hey, Cody, how are you doing? So, we've got the 3 games left. I don't think there's much exciting going to happen in those games. Like, Detroit's out and that Dallas, Carolina, and Tampa are all in. Tampa not doing great going to the playoffs, but they still have that switch they can turn on, right? You still got the greatest goalie, one of the best defensemen, and lots of firepower up front. Actually, another story that's curious, where are we at in the Braden Point? Has he got 49 goals? I think he's got 49 goals. Will Braden Point get 50? And I think I'm kind of pulling for him. I mean, you like seeing these stories. That would make how many 50 goal scorers? So you got 64 from Connor, 60 from Pastrnak, 54 from Rantanen, and 51, and then Braden Point at 49. Can Tage Thompson pull out 3 more goals? I think those are the stories you're kind of wondering. Get a couple guys over the hump. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 50-goal play. That's pretty darn good. And who's up here is Young Hughes. That's pretty darn good. Carter Verhaeghe, who was a 4th-line player in Tampa. Phenomenal year for him. Lots of interesting stories, and yet you see still really good goals against. And I think this is like a lot of young goalies emerging. Like Samsonov played real well in Toronto, I think. I like him. He's not perfect, but he's real good. Washington made an absolute mistake with him and Vanacek at 246. Igor Shesterkin, the second coming of the great Messiah. Look at all the guys ahead of him that had great years, like Ullmark, Swayman, Rantanen. We know when he's healthy is in there. Freddie Anderson, when he's healthy, is up there in the tops. And then Sorokin for the Islanders. Lots of good stories. And then young Jake Ottinger. I mean, this is a great era of goalies. You know what you don't see there? Canadians. Not a single Canadian in that mix. You got a Swede, you got an American, you got a Finn, you got a Russian, a Dane, an American, a Czech, and a Russian. Canada has some real, what's going on, Canada? Actually, the guy might be a Stuart Skinner. He's still got Carter Hart. If Philadelphia doesn't improve, then Carter's just go somewhere where they're going to play defense or something and have offense at the same time. Roger Delaney, good morning, sir. I'm glad, Cody, that you are good. So lots of interesting stories there. We hope that Braden Point gets 50. Can Tage Thompson pull it off and come up with 4 goals to get 50? I think those would be all great stories. We have 3 games left for the Red Wings. Most teams have 2. So we'll see. The big stories are the wild cards. Just going back for a sec to Detroit to wrap that up. So if you look at the season, kind of in review very quickly, and we'll do this properly. Jonathan Berggren, I had said at the beginning of the year, he is our hope for the future. I think coach was a little surprised when I said that, but he had already ripped up. He had 26 goals and was point a game in the AHL. He had nothing to prove in the AHL. That's real tough for a rookie player. So him going down at the beginning of the year, them keeping Zadina, who has absolutely not worked out, obviously. That's a bust. Not a problem with Jonathan Berggren. This guy's got really good skill. He's shown he can play wing. He is the new Henrik Zetterberg. Is Lucas Raymond capable of being Pavel Datsyuk? Very possibly. I won't put it past him. So if you look back to the Lucas Raymond draft, by the way, Tim Stützle was absolutely the right pick. And, Alexis Lafreniere's had a pretty good year playing in a 3rd-line role still for the New York Rangers. And he's got good points there. But he's not like Tim Stützle. Ooh. So you got to go Stützle, Raymond, maybe Lafreniere in that draft. If you go and redo it, you definitely don't go Byfield, which I was shocked. I think a lot of people are still surprised that LA went for Byfield because the word was out. He is rough. He is not refined and ready for the NHL. Maybe one day he will be, and he'll be a real good player. He's a big athletic specimen. Pius Suter, when they moved out some bodies like Tyler Bertuzzi, they moved out Sundqvist. This made room for Pius, and Pius was doing pretty well from the 4th line. Not a bad year for him. He had a really good second half. Olli Mata was a great signing. Even though he's a -6, I think that was a pretty inexpensive number 4 or 5 type defenseman for them. you'd like to see a little bit more offense, but you've got to watch Joe Veleno to appreciate he's a real good skater. He's a big body. Adam Ernie is what he is. Robbie Fabry, if he could ever play 80 games, would be great because when he was in the lineup, they were a much better team. Alex Chason came up, did real well, and Jordan Osterley is a pretty solid 6 defenseman, number 6. Gustav Lindstrom was a little disappointed. His play was not great. And Zadina, it's obviously he's a bust. I don't know. Robert Hagg will be back in the future. Kudos to Austin Czarnik and Matt Luff for having some good run here, getting some NHL games. Austin's got some games under his belt, and I don't know. I like when he come up. He's real tiny, but Marco Kasper only 1 game, and he's probably done for the year with that kneecap injury we mentioned. But this is the big thing is Simon Edmondson getting worked into the lineup, and you gotta love what you're seeing overall. And a full year with him and Sider, that'll be big, and that'll be real big. Phenomenal, right? Like excellent, elite hockey IQ, and that's what I kind of saw with him. Elite skill. At times, he looks very tiny on the ice. Like you would look at him and go, "Is he 5'9"?" But he's 5'11". They say he's 195. And I think my biggest concern was, would he do okay on the wing and where he get overpowered? He is super smart. He wins battles on the wing with skill and spacing. He keeps defenders off the puck, and he finds a way to get the puck on his teammate's stick when under pressure or to get around the defender. He is a very special player. Yeah, they have to win 1 game. Is their record worse than last year? No matter what? That's weird. They made the big coach sign, but I know they integrate a lot of players, and they were way above, and they unloaded at the deadline. And losing Rasmussen, I will again say, changed the course of the year. Kudos to Nedeljkovic. I mean, he came up and played some real good games here. I don't think he'll be back next year. Well, Hellberg, I don't think so. I think you got to say Husso's numbers have been battered in the last while, but overall, he just needs another guy like him. I don't think Sebastian Cossa is going to be ready next year, but maybe he'll start getting some games in the AHL and then the NHL. Were they? Oh, okay. So I guess it's a slight improvement. I feel like they did the same thing where they were 500 and then they weren't. I think it was worse last year, the tank. The tank this year was real. They were pretty doing pretty good most of the year until the trade deadline, until they lost Michael Rasmussen. So overall, you got to say the upside for this team is Lucas Raymond and Jonathan Berggren getting better. Michael Rasmussen coming back would be a huge thing. They need to get another goalie. So that's the one priority. They traded Philip Hronek. I don't understand. I would have committed to him long-term. He would have been perfect second pairing defenseman, better than Ben Sherratt. Problem with Sherratt, he's got that big contract and a no movement clause. But Red Wings got lots of dough. So I don't know. I would have signed Hronek personally, and maybe they still do. No, they can't. He's restricted free agent. So Vancouver got a steal there. But Simon Edmondson and Moritz Seider, you've got to be super excited about this. I don't see anybody coming in the draft based upon even just the 2 picks. Like the Islanders pick has gone up to 17 or 18, so that's getting worse. And if the Red Wings pick around 11th, which it looks like they will, you're not getting a guy that's coming into the team anytime soon. I know people say this is a deep draft. I think what this draft is this is like a draft of sections, right? The first 4 picks are real good. The next 5, 6 picks are real good. And then after that, it's like you've got guys that will probably have the opportunity to play in the NHL in some sort of a role. So in that sense, it's deep. Not a single defenseman in the top 10. You got to think that Reinbacher, the Finnish/Swedish defenseman, and maybe the Russian defenseman, you got to think Reinbacher might potentially jump up. If I look at the forwards and the picks through 5 through 10, and then I look at Reinbacher, I'm like, I need a defenseman. I take him. All those guys are going to take a while. There's some good players there, but I'm not overwhelmed by it. The top 4 are crazy. Right? Leo Carlson, Michkov, obviously Connor Bedard. Kind of crazy. So, as a Red Wing fan, overall, pretty good year, some improvement, part of the Yzer plan, but I think people are going to start getting impatient if this team doesn't make the playoffs. How do they get in the playoffs? They need a killer season next year from Raymond, Rasmussen taking the next step in their development. I think they figure out a way to move on from Zadina, and a full year of Simon Edmondson being healthy and in the lineup in the NHL would be great. It's possible he regresses a little bit, but man, the size, the skill, his willingness to step up on the play, and we're seeing him play physical, which, he was definitely the biggest problem with him at the beginning of the year was defensively. So he went to the AHL and he honed that part of his game. Did a pretty darn good job. He's not perfect, still risk it turning over the puck, but that combination, he's going to be a darn good player for a long time for the Red Wings. Jonathan Berggren going to be a real good player, and Lucas Raymond can take another step. You got to like Larkin's season, and then you get some veteran help in there. Nicola, how are you doing? So overall, 3 games left. You got to like overall the improvement in this team. Incremental, but they need upside from those players, and they need to find another goalie. They probably need another top 4 defenseman that's a right shot, like Philip Hronek. Maybe that was too expensive for him because eventually he's going to get 6-7 mil. But he could score, man. He was getting good offensive numbers. You look at the talent in Buffalo and Ottawa, and I think there's still a gap between Detroit and those teams. Not on defense, that's for sure. Seider and Evansson rival the pairing that you have in Buffalo of Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin. That's pretty darn close. There's not a big difference there. Ottawa, lots of good defensemen there now. Chychrun moving over. You got Shabbat. You've got Jake Sanderson. You still have Bernard Docker somewhere in that mix eventually. Brandstrom's in there. So they've taken a nice leap. The biggest story is Tim Stützle, franchise player. Jeez. Brady Tkachuk, the captain, 86 points for Stützle. Will he hit 90? That's, maybe. Tkachuk, 80 points, 35 goals. Now, Kotkaniemi's done well, but man, this was a big mistake. And a great year for Claude Giroux coming over. This was a good pickup in Alex DeBrincat. He's not plugged into Patty Kane anymore. His minus 30 is absolutely atrocious. So that's terrible. Batherson, real good offensive numbers. How are you a minus 35 when you have 61 points? Something's going on there. And Shane Pinto, 20 goals as a rookie. That's pretty good. And you know who's not here is Josh Norris. And Josh Norris would be a huge boon to this team. Get a healthy Josh Norris back, and that's something else. And then you've got Sogard coming up. So there's a big gap, in my opinion, between Ottawa and Detroit, just at the top end. You need to have, can Raymond get these numbers? I believe he can. He's not going to be a center, but he's got that ability. So overall, if you're a Detroit fan, you're looking at Buffalo with, big turnaround numbers or big numbers coming out of players like Tage Thompson, Dylan Cousins. And then you look at Ottawa with Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, and Josh Norris. You got to think there's still a bit of a gap. You don't have that high-end octane offense coming out of Detroit. And the thing about these guys is they got big players that are able to do it. The defense is interesting because you got the Twin Towers. Alex Tuck leaving Jack Eichel in his dust, by the way. That trade worked out real well. And Casey Middlestad carving out a bit of a role here as like a second line, third line type center with 53 points is pretty good. 26 goals for Olofsson. You got this young Jack Quinn pumping in 36 points. He's going to be real good. You got to think at some point he'll bump up. And then Peyton Krebs had a decent year. Peyton's still got upside, I think. So you got to say, just in here, you've got a bit of a gap. Devin Levy getting into the NHL, I think he got excited in the first couple games, but in the end, I think he's probably I always kind of felt he was a backup, but maybe not. We'll see. We will see. Luke Onen, not bad. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. 892 and 361, but 17 and 11. This team lives and dies by their offense. So you got to say, despite those two superstar D back there in Rasmussen And Owen Power, who's a rookie, 20-year-old rookie, and a 22 or 23-year-old, like probably I would think that he's a Norris Trophy finalist. Rasmus Dahlin had a real great year. Is Erik Karlsson going to win it? I think he might. He's got 98 points. Has he hit 100? Kind of surprised that nobody was able to snatch him up. That contract is so ugly. And don't look now, but Quinn Hughes gets 73 points. Dougie Hamilton, 73 points. And 72 points for Rasmus Dahlin. Josh Morrissey, 72 points. Brandon Montour, 72 points. They all kind of jumped ahead. The offense is up this year. It's got to be. I think in the end, this has got to be. Even though you see these good numbers over here in the goalies, the offense has got to be up. And then you look at the stories of Benner's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. The goalie in Vegas should have, but I think he got hurt, right? Logan Thompson. Maselli's been a shock. Maybe he's a finalist. McTavish has been flat the last little while, but 42 points, nothing to sneeze at. And Kent Johnson snuck up into that conversation. Real good year for Wyatt Johnson in Dallas. And you got to like Jack Quinn. Noah Cates surprised me. Owen Power, 35. You think maybe Owen Power, Benners. I would have said McTavish, but Maselli's made a case here, jumping up in the scoring for Arizona. Real good playmaker, Maselli. So lots of interesting stories this season. We still have 3 games to go with your Red Wings. So tonight we've got Dallas, Detroit, and then we've got Carolina, Detroit, and then we finish the year in Tampa against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Red Wings not making the playoffs, but you've got to overall like the progress and the fact that he still accumulated a ton of assets. Good morning, Willie. How are you doing? So if you're a Red Wings fan, season's coming to a close. You still have 3 games. Most teams only have 2, so you get to see the young guys, hopefully, like Simon Edmondson, going to be such a great player for them. Jonathan Berggren, such a great player. Do they sit Simon Edmondson? I don't think so. They don't have a reason to. He's still played under 25 games. So next year, think about this. Simon Edmondson next year, even though let's say he plays 3 more games, that will be 11 on the year. He's still eligible for the Calder Trophy. And man, with him and Seider, it's been impressive. So you've got a candidate there. Now, you'll probably have a Connor Bedard in the NHL. Soderblom's no joke either. Let's not underestimate Elmer Soderblom. He could have 20 goals this year. I'm sorry. Totally had the ability to do that. Got injured for a while, got sent down to make room for some bodies that they were trying to evaluate. I think they know how good this guy is. But they were able to send him down contractually. He's a monster that can score. And you already got a monster that's showing he can score in Michael Rasmussen. So those 2 guys are going to be very interesting pieces to a weird puzzle. It is a little weird. You don't have Tim Stützle or Brady Tkachuk. You don't have those guys. You got 2 elite players in Lucas Raymond and Jonathan Berggren, but they're undersized. Stützle is like 6'1", and Brady, the baby bull, is like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". He might be 6'4". I think he's 6'4". What about his brother, Matthew? Do you think Florida got the better of that trade with Calgary? Oh, yes, they did. I knew that was going to happen. Yes, they got Mackenzie Weegar. Yes, they were kind of forced to, obviously, to move Tkachuk. They got Mackenzie Weegar. They got Huberdeau, but Huberdeau showing he's not a fit with Mr. Sutter. Will he get 60 points this year? I don't think so. After 115, 18 points, astute trade by the GM, Bill Zito in Florida. Very astute trade. And Florida going on a tear at the end of the year. If you have a Tkachuk in your lineup, Brady or a Matthew, you got to love it. Those guys are gritty and they're heart and soul type players, leaders. They got toughness and offense, and they're, in the case of Matthew, is the ultimate annoyance in the universe. Is he going to get 110 points? He's getting pretty close. What does he hit? Let's just double check. He's up there. Is he 108 or 109 right now? Matthew's got 108 points. Pastrnak, 109. Kucherov, don't forget Kucherov, 111. Nathan McKinnon missed a bunch of games, 107. So there's lots of good stuff going on in the NHL this year. And congratulations to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 103 points. First ever 100-point season. Edmonton's for real, guys. How fun would it be to have a Boston Edmonton Oiler final going back to, was it 19? When was that final? That was a final in 1990? No. Was it Boston was in the final in 1990 when Edmonton won the cup? Crazy stories. Well, we'll look out for the game tonight. We will see you on Wednesday morning. We will recap what happens tonight in the game against Dallas Stars, and then we will preview the game against the Carolina Hurricanes, and then the season will be wrapped up. It was 1990, right? Boston, Edmonton, Columbus House. That's what I thought. Back to the future. Well, there was no Wayne Gretzky on that team. That was the Mark Messier, Yari Curry led team. That was Bill Ranford, I think, in net. Former Boston Bruin, if I'm not mistaken. That's who the goalie was. Can Connor McDavid get past the third round? They made it to the third round this year. They got to win the first round first, obviously, and then the second, and then the third. But man, it would be amazing to see them in the final. They were kind of my pick at the beginning of the year. They've gone on an absolute rip-roaring tear since the acquisition of Mattias Ekholm. Stuart Skinner, I think they said, is 15-1-1. Stuart Skinner's a rookie. Does Stuart Skinner get consideration for the Calder? He should. Has he played enough games? Alan Busness, how are you doing, sir? So we have games tonight for Detroit. Then we have tonight against the Dallas Stars in Detroit, and then you've got 2 games on the road, Carolina and then Tampa, and that's the season for the Red Wings. Big news stories this year. And we'll recount these big stories, but Connor McDavid hitting 150. He's got 151. Kim Braden Point hit 50, but you got Pastrnak at 60. Jason Robertson eclipsing Mike Modanos. Mike Modano's best year in Dallas was 94 points. Does that seem crazy? Jason Robertson 103. And then Sid the Kid becoming the 15th player to get 1,500 points. Let's not forget Mikko Rantanen. Let's not forget Taro Hirose getting some games. He's had a very good year in Grand Rapids, by the way. He is a good player. He's just not a great player. He doesn't have a great shot. He's a good playmaker, and he's smart. But I guess it's just not enough to carve out a full-time role in the NHL. You'd like to see those signings work out. He's done a real good job, and he'll be a guy that gets a lot of points in the AHL and can flex up and help, but it is what he is. Why is that? Because you wanted to lose against Dallas? Or you wanted Dallas to lose against the Red Wings? Why do you want Dallas to? Is there a race there that I'm not aware of with Minnesota and what's in the Western race over there? I mean, Dallas is firmly in the playoffs, right? So it's Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota, 104, 102, 100 points. So all played 79 games. They all got 3 games left. So is that why which team are you pulling for? They won 3 in a row. Colorado's won 5 in a row and 1 in a row for Minnesota, but they are 6-2-2 in their last 10. Look at Edmonton. It says 7 wins in a row and 9-0-1. Go beyond that. It goes back to the trade deadline and getting Mattias Ekholm. They've been almost unbeatable. That was the final piece, like to a leaky ship back there. Such a great defenseman. Has offensive ability, shutdown guy, excellent number 2 defenseman. Big upgrade over Tyson Barrie, who was 5-on-5, just erratic. But Tyson Barrie's numbers are pretty good at 5-on-5, but I think that's because he's being protected. If you see him in a 1-on-1 battle or you see him where he's turnover pucks, you don't love those things. And he's very good on the power play, but you don't lose a ton with Ekholm on the power play. And the guy that stepped up is Evan Bouchard, who's had a great year. He had a real rough beginning of the year, but man, he's turned it on. Running a power play is exactly what Evan Bouchard should be doing. Big shot, improved his skating, big defenseman. So you look at Edmonton, and you got to love, since that Mattias Ekholm deal, So good. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Have a wonderful day. We will see you on Wednesday. Check out Hockey Nation tonight. I think they said there's a special guest tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern, I believe. RJ Calabro had posted this up in there. Lots of games tonight if you want to watch hockey, including Dallas and Detroit. There's some other good stories in there with Carolina and Ottawa. Ottawa trying to make a little statement that we're going to be back next year. Toronto, Florida trying to, stay in that first wild card spot. Been crushing it. Can they keep the streak alive? Great year for Matthew Tkachuk. Great year for Brandon Montour. Great year for Carter Verhaeghe. 41 goals. What the heck? That's called plucking a guy from a team. Have a wonderful day. We will see you on Wednesday.